3, I call the October 6, 2022 Planning Board meeting to order. We have the following board members with us: Vice Chair Bailey, we have Commissioner Dorner, and myself, Chair Shapiro. And on to the business at hand. Please note that the deadline for all participant pre-registration for all submissions of materials and exhibits was 12 noon on the Tuesday before this planning board meeting. Registered speakers may join the meeting with a link provided in the email provided by the planning board office, or listen by phone by utilizing the call-in number provided in the email. Of course, anyone may tune in to watch the planning board meeting live via live stream. If you wish to speak or become a person of record, you may use our online web form, which you'll see referenced on the screen before you. In addition to the commissioners, we are joined by our Deputy Planning Director, Derek Berlage, our Principal Counsel, David Warner, Associate General Counsel, Elisa Coleman. I think we have Ms. Coleman and not Mr. Warner. We have Jessica Jones, our Planning Board Administrator, Mr. Joe Parsons, our Senior Technical Hearing Writer, James Hunt, the Division Chief, Development Review Division, and Kenny Flanagan, who's guiding us through the exhibits. Mr. Flanagan, good to see you. And Ryan Cron, who is our technical guru, is helping us out behind the scenes. We're going to make, well, I'll go through the agenda, but it's going to be a short agenda, folks. So let's begin with item 2, which is a motion to approve the draft minutes of September 29, 2022. Is there a motion to approve the draft minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Discussion on the motion. I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
Vote aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Vote aye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it, 3-0. The next item on the agenda is item 3A. This is a legislative item at CB 105, 2022. The bill is intended to create alternative development standards and uses for designated employment areas in the Legacy Comprehensive Design Zone under certain circumstances. We have a staff recommendation. I'll turn it over to, who do we have who's going to talk this through for us?
Hightower.
Ms. Hightower, are you on the line? There you are.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. So if you could take us through this, and then we'll take this up, Commissioner.
Yes, good morning, Chair and members of the Planning Board. Again, for the record, Raina Hightower. This bill allows any property zoned LCD as of April 1st, 2022 that is identified with an employment area in an area master plan or sector plan to develop using the standards and uses applicable to the former EIA zone. This bill waives the green area standards of the EIA zone and reduces the minimum green area to 10%. The bill also allows the minimum standards for landscaping, buffering, and screening for all of the uses to be modified by the approved CDP. There is only one area with LCD zone properties as of April 1st, 2022, inside of an employment area, which is in a master plan. It is the 2022 approved Bowie, Mitchellville, and vicinity master plan, and the local employment area is the Collington local employment area, which includes the Collington Trade Center and the planned National Capital Business Park. This bill permits unique development standards for a subset of LCD zone properties, which is in direct opposition to the fundamental principles of land use regulations. The National Capital Business Park project is already proceeding under an existing legislative text amendment, which is or was CB 22-2020 Draft 2, and that bill does exactly what CB 105 proposes to do. There's an approved basic plan and, the approved basic plan and CDP allows this development to develop using the prior zoning ordinance regulations. We recommend amendments to this bill if the district council decides to move forward with the bill, but staff recommends that the planning board vote to oppose CB 105, 2022. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hightower. So, commissioners, I want to have a a more fleshed out discussion on this this issue. We all dislike text amendments for sure. This is not your typical spot zoning type of text amendment. That's, that's caused so many of the problems that we've seen in the past. So this actually applies to multiple properties, not just one property. And in general, these are properties that that I think even staff would agree that we see as appropriate to develop as industrial. So, and some of this is a timing issue. So the Bowie Vicinity Master Plan that's already been approved lays this out as industrial, and it offers the same type of development as the future zoning would allow. That's what this text amendment would do. So at some level, for economic development purposes, this is jumpstarting a process that's been slowed down through the Bowie Vicinity Master Plan process that we all know we've all been in the middle of, has been slowed down. So there's kind of an economic development imperative to keep this moving along. And again, even while I would agree, and I imagine you're in the same place, that we're not big fans of text amendments, and staff takes a principled position on this, I think, pretty clearly. But I think even staff would agree that there's other lenses to look at for this project. And I think I saw the planning director on the line as well. She may have some thoughts about that. If you're able to weigh in, that might be helpful. But that's what's before us, and I'd love to hear your thoughts about this, commissioners. I would like us to consider not taking staff's recommendation, and for us to support this text amendment, even though staff has not, for the reasons that I've laid out. So what are your thoughts, feelings, reactions to this? And again, Director Checkley, if you're on the line, if you have anything you want to weigh in about, that would be helpful.
Let's maybe hear from Director Checkley first, because what I would like to find out is, does staff agree that this is not spot zoning? And yeah, text amendments are not great. And it's especially not good when we're trying to come up with a modern zoning application to the whole county, particularly when certain legislation isn't necessarily clearly only retroactive when it could affect development going forward for other tie in. So maybe we can ask Director Checkley to weigh in, and then I'd like to know from staff, like, do you think this is spot zoning? And where are your pain points on this legislation? And do you think it's enough just to kind of clarify some of the potential like phrases and things in the proposed legislation, so it's more consistent with CB 22/2020 DR2, or where's kind of the hangups?
Thanks for that, Commissioner. Director Checkley?
Yes. So as is the case in a lot of situations, staff looks at these text amendments from a purely zoning ordinance principle, purity. But we do understand, and we look to the board to take into necessary other considerations, because you have a broader purpose in forwarding the county, protecting the public, those types of things. So while we're technically opposed to the bill because of, as I said, the position we take in terms of the zoning ordinance, we understand that there are other considerations that the board needs to take when viewing these proposed legislations.
And what other considerations are you referring to? Could you give me an example?
Well, as I stated, the public interest, the economic prosperity of the county, moving the county forward, and basically doing what's best for the county, as opposed to the academic, technical position that staff takes. We don't have the luxury, if you will, of being able to take into, practical considerations. We just look at it strictly from a technical standpoint. We do not make policy, that's the board's prerogative.
Okay.
Right. Thank you for that. And I, you know, that part of this is not always easy, right? Because I think part of our job, one of the hats we wear is similar to the planning departments, which is part of our job is to protect the integrity of the zoning ordinance. And we're also broadly defined an economic development agency. And I think it's in our interest to look at this through a broader lens. And so this is the kind of example, and I'm not encouraging us to do this on a regular basis by any stretch. This just feels like a pretty unique situation, and it's really an issue of timing. Because if you look at what has already been approved through the Bowie City Master Plan, you know, this is the direction that we're going to be going anyhow. But there's an economic development imperative to move this process along, and so that's why I'm encouraging us to take this action. So, yeah, I mean, continue. Thoughts, reactions, questions?
I would like to hear Ms. Hightower kind of weigh in on some of the questions I had asked on like spot zoning, and then sort of the extent of like some of these discrepancies, because it seems like we have kind of like two not quite parallel processes, or maybe a couple of parallel processes kind of happening in county legislation, where we have some existing legislative text amendments that are already kind of in the works, and then we also have the Dewey, Mitchellville and Vicinity Master Plan in there that's proceeding, that maybe a little bit slower than this legislation. So I kind of want to find out, like, is this specifically just for that area? And if we get enough of these kind of edits in, then it's almost like at least tying down what might not be the first best kind of solution, but getting to like almost the second best. Because just looking at the legislation, I also know that there's quite a few counselors or council members who have signed on to this. So the practicality of this is that it may go forward, and at least like let's get into stuff that'll fix things that'll happen within that amendment.
If I may jump in before Ms. Hightower, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please.
Just a little more context. We find ourselves, or the council finds itself in this position because of what happened with the SMA for the Bowie Master Plan. The master plan recommends this for that site, and because of the delay for various reasons and not having the SMA go in line with the master plan, here we are. I don't know if that helps, but Ms. Hightower, if you have something to add.
I do not have anything to add. Thank you, Director Checkley.
Let me just pick up Commissioner Dorner and amplify a question that you have. You know, the question is this sort of a, I don't want to nuance it too much, but how egregious an example of spot zoning is this? Is kind of the question I heard you say. And Director Checkley, I see you shaking your head. If you could react specifically to that question around the spot zoning, because I know that's a concern of all of us.
Yes, it is, and that is why staff took the technical position it did. Not that it only applies to this one property, but that generally speaking, we don't support these types of amendments because we think that the master plan SMA zoning map amendment process is the correct route to do these types of things. But given that it is in line, this bill is in line with the approved, adopted master plan, and but for the delay in having the zoning new ordinance adopted way back, the SMA would have gone through with the master plan, and we would not be in this position.
Right.
And
Thank
just
you
for timing wise, how long is it going to take for the SMA to actually take hold? Like, will this proceed by like a number of months, or if this legislation would go through, is this sort of like a temporary fix that the council is looking to make, or can you place that kind of in context?
Well, we certainly hope it won't be very much longer. We were, as you know, scheduled to have a public hearing last week, and then the council was going to take up the SMA on the 25th or the 22nd. I'm a little confused in my dates, but that has been postponed. We're hopeful that it will soon happen, but that is the recommendation from the master plan. That is the recommendation that staff will be putting forward, has put forward in the proposed SMA. So hopefully the two will mix shortly with the adoption of the SMA.
And I think if I can build on that, I mean, that's kind of where I'm coming from too. Staff's opposition to this, I don't want to characterize it in ways that you might disagree, but staff's opposition to this at some level is technical, because the ultimate substance of this, staff's in agreement with. It's just this zoning text amendment process, which gets, even if it's not a site, it gets closer to spot zoning on principle. You know, they're not in support of it, and typically we aren't either. But as Director Chuckley pointed out, the ultimate goal is a goal that we all support, the direction that we're going to take. And so I think there's a political imperative because of the economic development lens that we might look through as well, that says, well, let's just go ahead and do this one. So that's what I'm asking you all to consider. Again, it's an unusual situation, but I hope I can count on your support for this, and we can move this forward.
So let me ask you a question. Like, if we were to change the staff recommendation to that would be transmitted to be just take no position, and point out all of the kind of nuanced details that you have to like tighten this up so it doesn't mess up a bunch of other areas in the county, would that be adequate? Like, obviously, like, we want to point out that, like, it's not a good idea to do spot zoning. It's not a good idea to do text amendments in these properties. Like, it's just sloppy. That's not how zoning should work. That's not how we should be doing this when we're going through a zoning rewrite. But in the practicality of this, if it's just used as like a bridge, and it seems like it has quite a bit of support from the council, just looking at the number of members who signed on and supported it. If we have no position, but we support all these edits that you suggested in here, would that be adequate for staff? Because I'm also trying to look at we're from a practical standpoint, across the country and especially in our county, we're just not producing enough development in a lot of areas. Like, we're not producing enough housing, we're not producing enough commercial stuff. The delays just kill me. And I look at this from like as an economist who studied land use regulations and delays and like local governments just slowing things down. It adds cost to timelines, and that makes everything more expensive and more unaffordable. So to the extent that like when I wear my hat of like, how do I guide staff or how do we make decisions in our county, a lot of times I'm thinking about where can we shave off like a couple of days or make things a little bit easier to do, not giving developers just like the reign of the county and just being able to run free, but reducing barriers where we don't really necessarily need them if we kind of step back and look at it, or also from the lens of like just providing more clarity in what we're trying to do. And in this case, if it's just clarifying like this is a very specific area and it should only be for that specific area, it might at least give some signals to the council that when you do this, just like if you're going to screw up things in making text amendments, at least screw it up in only a certain place, and try and do whatever fixes you need for that area, but don't mess up the rest of the county. And then hopefully at least give more clarity for whoever's going into that area to develop or whatever they might need as they kind of bridge the gap to get to that SMA. But how would staff feel on taking no position and transmitting all these comments? And hopefully we're setting up some of these like mini sessions with the council members to discourage them against text amendments and spot zoning and these other practices in the near future, because it seems like we're getting a lot of these sorts of pieces of legislation coming over.
Let me weigh in before we turn to Director Chuckley. Let me just weigh in because, and of course we'll hear from her as well. I'm less inclined to even ask staff to change its position, because I think that again, we can look at things through a different lens, but I think it's a really complicated precedent to ask staff to yeah, I would rather have us disagree with staff than to push them to take it up in a different way. So that's my 2 cents on it. You know, there's a way in which maybe I'm being overprotective of staff, but you know, they have their job and they have their lens, and I think that's appropriate. And we can just look at things in different ways sometimes. So for what it's worth, that's my 2 cents. And I don't want, Director Chickley, I don't want to get you too caught up in the middle of this, but you know, I just need to throw my 2 cents in.
Let me ask you the question then. Are you suggesting then that no position would be in some way looking at the staff in a different way if we take no position? I don't quite understand your statement, sir. I guess
Me or Commissioner Dorner?
you.
Mine is that we take the position that we take, but we don't ask staff to reconsider their position. So if staff says they're in opposition, we can choose to take staff's recommendation, or we can choose to support this. But I don't want to go back and say, staff, will you revisit your position and recommend to us something different? That's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Staff's recommendation, recommendation.
But no position is not necessarily saying to staff, we want you to take a different position either.
I think what Commissioner Dorner was saying is he's asking staff to come back, revise their position, and come back with a no position recommendation to us.
Okay. All right.
So I wouldn't say necessarily to come back to us. And we've done this in the past a few times where we're just kind of on the fence, and ultimately, like, we just have to make the tough call on some things. And we almost always agree with staff because they're the professionals who are the experts on the ground doing this day in, day out. But sometimes we just have to make a call, like if it's close to the line and we could just stay on the line of like not opposing, but just not taking a position, then we sometimes do that. And there have been times where like they've said no position and I want to oppose because I'm just starkly against some of the things that the county council is doing. Like, I just think it's really bad practices. But I think it might be just more consistent with what we've done recently to take no position, particularly because I've been wanting to oppose. And I think there have been more egregious things that they've been doing lately, and we haven't opposed it. But I've been fine with taking the staff's position on that and just kind of going with the flow and not rocking the boat too much. So I just want to know, like, would staff be comfortable with taking no position and certainly voicing these concerns, because the edits should probably happen, and we need to be careful. But I don't know how far on the other side of this they feel. So I just wanted to ask and see kind of like where they are at, because I don't want us to look like we're discounting staff, because we're not. And certainly appreciate all the analysis that happens in here.
Well, there are certainly, and have been, and I'm sure there will be again, times and situations where staff feels very strongly and we will fall on our sword. This is not one of them. I don't know if that answers your question. We do not feel.
That's good. Go ahead, sorry.
This is not a situation where we feel that we need to draw a line in the sand.
Okay. Ms. Isaac, do you have anything else?
No, Commissioner Dorner, thank you.
So where are we, folks?
I don't think we necessarily, in the past, and I mean, maybe procedural, like we can adjust things, but in the past, what we've asked staff to do as they transmit recommendations is just to change the recommendation, just to be consistent with like a certain thing. Like, it doesn't mean that we're going to say you have to accept, and like you have to do everything positive. All I would suggest would just change the recommendation to not supporting, but just no opposition, instead of saying oppose in there. And we could transmit all the other recommendations as is. And I mean, if it was up to me, I would even put in stronger language about like recommending that we're careful about not doing text amendments and not doing spot zoning and all these bad practices that can lead us astray from what we've been trying to do. But I realize that we have to also balance niceties sometimes. And some of my positions that might be stronger, probably the staff may not be comfortable making entirely. But I think we could just change it maybe to just not oppose or take no position on it. And we could just transmit the recommendations. And then when they talk with the county council staff, they can convey what we've discussed today, that like, it's not really good practice to do all these things, but here's what we want to do to be careful. And we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't have an SMA in front of us coming up hopefully soon. And I mean, from my view, I think this is just kind of like a bridge to get to that point. If we didn't have the SMA, like, I might oppose it because I don't think this is the right way to do stuff. But if this just gives at least a little bit more certainty to kind of moving forward, assuming that like it might take a bit longer since we keep getting delays to meet with the council on this stuff, then maybe that's just what we need to just kind of like get to that next stage.
So I want to make sure I understand what you're requesting. You're asking staff to revise their position and to take no position on this. And then are you suggesting that we as a body would then also take no position, or then we could support this?
We would transmit the recommendations as is. So it's still the same kind of recommendations. Like I'm not going to approve something that's total text amendments and just gunking up what we're trying to do. Because I also think just on principle that's not good. And regardless if we want economic development in the county and stuff, like we are by and far trying to implement good planning practices. And if the council really wants to do their job right, they should speed things up or come to us a little bit earlier and talk with us about what to do in the right way and not the right way. Or other ways of doing it. But I think taking no position on this and giving the recommendations would be consistent with what we've done in the past. And then offline, they can talk with staff and just provide a little bit more context into like why we voted for this. And if they had done this just without even an SMA, we probably would have opposed it. Because I'm comfortable with them saying that, like Commissioner Dorner said that, like that's fine. And they don't have to necessarily be on sort of the chopping block for that.
Okay. Director Checkley, any thoughts on that?
We're good with that. We've done that in the past. That's not unusual.
Okay. Vice Chair Bailey, does that work for you?
That works for me. I no position, but I just wasn't that adamant about telling them what to do next, but offering why we made this no position statement.
Right. So staff, you can revise your recommendation to essentially the content is the same, but the conclusion from the content is no position. And then we would take no position. And again, to your point, Commissioner Dorner, we would say, I mean, if we can make the distinction that on the content of the issue, we're supportive in terms of the process because it's a text amendment, we have concerns. But when we balance that out, it's a decision that council's going to make, and we have no position on that.
Right.
I think it's good.
Okay, that works for me. So I'm not sure then, this is new to me. So what are we asking? How do we do this? Because it requires staff to come to us with something slightly different.
No, we don't have to come back to you. We can take what you said today, amend the recommendation, and you can still take an action now.
Okay. So the motion would be for us to take no position in aligned with staff's revised recommendation.
So moved.
That is the motion.
And
Second.
I think Commissioner Dorner's made a motion, Vice Chair Bailey's made a second. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Commissioner Dorner?
Did I?
Vice Chair Bailey?
But
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0. Thanks for everybody for the discussion and for the decision. I appreciate it. Okay. Next on the agenda, we have the consent agenda. At staff's request, I've been asked to, I'm going to pull one item off the consent agenda, which is EcoGrads. Let me make sure I get the right number for that one. It's 22-105. It's a draft resolution for DSP 21024. So we're going to pull that off the consent agenda at staff's request, and we'll take that up as the right away under regular items in just a minute. So is there a motion to approve the consent agenda minus the one item?
Which item are we taking off of the consent agenda?
It's EcoGrads. It's
It's part of
under 4B.
4B?
Under 4B, it's one of the supplemental items. It's the draft resolution PGCPB number 2022-105 DSP 21024 EcoGrads.
Okay.
So I'll move that we approve the consent agenda for 4A, 4B, and 4D with the exception of the supplemental item under 4BC, that we remove that from the consent agenda.
Okay.
Second.
Motion is second to adopt the consent agenda. No further discussion. I'll call the roll. Commissioner Dorner.
Good.
Vice Chair Bailey.
Good eye.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it, 3-0. So we'll now move on to the regular agenda. We have item 5 and this new item that we just added, item 6, EcoGrads. Let's take up item 6, EcoGrads first, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Hunt. And he said this is just a technical issue and will take about a minute. Mr. Hunt.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning. For the record, James Hunt with the Development Review Division. Just wanted to briefly go on the record real quick and make one minor correction to the resolution for EcoGrads detailed site plan DSP 21024, which is on this morning's agenda. In particular, we're concerned about talking about condition number 1B. It should read, prior to certification, the applicant shall revise the plan as follows or provide the specified documentation, designate and reserve a minimum of 6 retail/visitor parking spaces in the parking garage in close proximity to the entrance of the ground floor retail locations. This particular condition itself was actually what was acted upon last week. Staff just neglected in putting this into the resolution for this week by error, and we want to make sure it got in there corrected before getting approved.
So thank you, Mr. Hunt. So if there's no questions, the motion would be to adopt this item with the amendment as read into the record by Mr. Hunt.
Is
So
Mr. want to say anything or no?
Say again?
Is Mr. Tedesco, who's I think the attorney for this project, did he have any opposition to that? I assume he's fine.
We can ask him. Mr. Tedesco, are you in the line? I'm not sure he is, but I imagine, Mr. Hunt, that this has all been worked out in advance.
Yes, we had this discussion with Mr. Tedesco prior to this morning's public hearing, and he agreed.
So moved as read into the record by Mr. Hunt.
Second.
Thank you. With motion is second. If there's no discussion on the motion, I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
But aye.
Commissioner Dorner.
Good.
I vote aye as well. Ayes have it, 3-0. Thank you, Mr. Hunt. And our next and final item on the agenda is item number 5, MR 2022-018 Cheverly Public Works Complex. We have a staff, brief staff report. We have some representatives from the town as well who want to give the opportunity to speak. Let me turn it over to staff. Ms. Hassan.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Shapiro. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Good to see you.
Planning Board members, good morning. For the record, I'm Fatima Hassan, Special Projects Section of Countywide Planning. This mandatory referral review is for the town of Cheverly Public Works Building, construction of a 2-story, 18,615 square foot building with associated parking and site improvements to house the Department of Public Works. Next slide, please. The site is located in Councilmanic District 5 in Planning Area 69, Bladensburg, New Carrollton, and vicinity. in the established communities portion of the county. Next slide, please. Parcel A is a partially forested 12.42 acre parcel at 6401 Forest Road in Cheverly. It's owned by the Cheverly Mayor and Town Council. The site is bounded on the east by US 50 and on the north by single-family homes and Forest Road. On the west are single-family lots, and on the south it is bounded by single-family lots and open space. The parcel contains various public facilities for the town of Cheverly, including the police department, town hall, and the existing public works building and associated accessory structures. Next slide, please. The parcel is zoned ROS, Reserved Open Space. Next slide, please. Parcel A, shown here outlined in red, shows a clearing and buildings in the southeast corner of the parcel near US 50. This is the location of the existing Public Works building and an associated storage yard that's used for leaf collection operations, fleet maintenance, and other uses. Next slide, please. The parcel is in the 8-digit Anacostia River watershed. The site's topography varies in elevation, with the highest points located in the vicinity of the police department building on the western portion of the parcel, and the lowest points at the entrance from Forest Road. Current impervious area that is existing conditions is approximately 48,400 square feet. The total impervious area with the proposed project in place will be 51,077 square feet. So there's a net increase of approximately 2,677 square feet of impervious area. Next slide, please. US 50 John Hanson Highway, shown here, is identified in the 2009 approved countywide master plan of transportation as a freeway. Next slide, please. This is the site plan for the Public Works building. You can also see the covered parking structure south of the building, which will provide space for 11 vehicles and plow storage. Also on the east side of the building is a 5,300 square foot space for leaf collection and a salt storage area. Next slide, please. It will be a 2-story, 5-bay pre-engineered building. The first floor will include offices, a customer service reception area, a conference room, an auditorium, a training room, a kitchen, fitness center, shower rooms, restrooms, and a vehicle maintenance area. The second floor will include meeting rooms and restrooms. The exterior of the building will feature a covered vehicle wash bay on the eastern side. And there will be a total of 43 spaces, not including the 11 spaces that are inside of the covered parking structure. There are also additional parking spaces available on the top of the hill near the police department building. Next slide, please. The recommendations are listed here, and I will highlight some of them. Staff recommends compatible signage and screening from the nearby residences. The applicant should provide a tree canopy coverage schedule and should contact the fire EMS department to request a pre-incident emergency plan. Next slide, please. Staff further recommends revising the tree conservation plan and installing and maintaining a sprinkler system, automated external defibrillators, and bleeding control kits. So this concludes the staff presentation, and we will be happy to answer any questions you have. We have some folks from the town of Cheverly as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Song. Questions for staff? If not, we'll turn to the representatives of the town of Cheverly. I believe we have the mayor on the line.
Hey, can I ask just one question real quick?
Yes, questions for
I
staff.
didn't notice it in the staff report, and I didn't hear it in the presentation, but I'm going to conjure up my best impression of Commissioner Giraldo and ask, where's the ED? So, and I'm not trying to imitate his voice, but at least the idea is like we have 43 parking spaces, 2 are for ADAs, which is federal requirements, but where are the EV stations in here? Because I'm not seeing any, and this would be a great opportunity for their public works to do that if they can, or if they can seek grant money to do it.
That's a great question. I would defer to the town of Cheverly.
Okay, so I'll pause and then let the mayor speak and anyone else, and then maybe we can address that.
We have Mr. Brayman. Good to see you, Mr. Brayman.
Thank you,
Mr.
Chair.
Do we have the mayor as well, Steve?
I believe we do. Mayor Monune, are you able to join us? And then I can address the EV issue.
Good morning. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you. We can't see you, Mayor, but we can hear
Okay,
you.
great. I apologize. I'm actually in between meetings, so I'm doing this one in my car.
You're fine. Take it away.
Thank you so much for the consideration for this. Thank you for your question. We actually have 2 EV chargers that are already next to our current public works building. So the question is also a great reminder to us to increase those numbers, because we do want to make sure there's more folks with electric vehicles that can charge throughout town. We did have a plan to have different charging stations throughout the town for other reasons, but I'll let Mr. Brayman speak to that question. This is obviously one of the biggest things that Cheverly has brought forward probably for the last 50 years. The Public Works building, if you've seen the current state, is I think it's probably more than dilapidated. And so we just really need to give what we would call a quality state-of-the-art building to our town, and it allows for some meeting space up at the top level. This helps us with stormwater management. We really don't have much over there at this point, and we've had some serious floods, as you all may be aware. The building itself currently floods, so it helps us to mitigate that. And then just as a last point, it was named after a historical figure for our town. And so we really appreciate being able to honor Mr. Ely, who was the first African-American council member on the council for the town of Cheverly. So the recommendations that I see make sense, and I will turn it over to Mr. Brayman. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Brayman?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Planning Commissioners. Appreciate this opportunity. We actually have 3 EV chargers that are currently down right immediately across. If you're looking at this rendering, it would be right across from the white car that you see facing away from the building. Those chargers are actually level 2s. They've been in there. They're free to the community. We have had discussions with and will continue to have discussions with the design build team. I'd like to thank them for all their great work and the staff work in putting together this technical staff report on how to accommodate not only EV stations for the citizens, but we've even thought about futurizing or being future-proof for the fleet. It would appear that what we need to do is there currently is a line that would power line that runs across the parking lot and then comes back up. If you see the covered vehicle shed, that covered parking. So we'd probably look at running an additional line, power line that is, back to some existing poles there and feed in through there, which would allow us to think about feeding the parking lot as well. So these are all things that we are going to take under consideration as we continue to go forward. But I have to say that this is a mighty budget for us to tackle, and so we are certainly greening up the facility, and we will incorporate as many of these as we possibly can. Also too, I appreciate the mention of a grant opportunity. We are looking at that. The 3 EV chargers we have are from the EV Institute up in Baltimore. We'll continue to pursue that, as well as other grants as well. We have looked throughout the town how we can incorporate some higher capacity or fast chargers. We haven't been able to exactly locate a good area for those, but we continue to look for that. So I think we're actually on the forefront that we've been offering free electricity prior to, or free charging prior to my tenure. So for about the past 5 years. So I appreciate those comments, and we're certainly cognizant of it, and the team's listening, and we'll continue to strive for that.
Thank you, Mr. Brayman. Appreciate it. Any other questions for Mr. Brayman or the mayor?
Yeah, just a couple other questions. So thank you for pointing out the EV chargers are there. Do you know, is the roof on the main Public Works building, or maybe that covered lot, is it going to be strong enough to support potentially solar later on? Like, I know obviously you're on a tight budget, but if you at least have the infrastructure there where, like, down the line, if you were to get grants or other funding, maybe you could actually put solar panels, and then that could actually power some of the EV, or at least reduce the cost in the city and not have to foot the whole bill.
That's actually a core specification from the beginning, was for the pre-engineered metal building to be able to support solar. So we should be able to put a solar array. In fact, we're looking at installing, I don't know exactly what the term is, but where we would adhere it or fasten it to the roof, pre-installing those so that it is easier and better for us to install to that roof. So that is something that I've already looked into and had some discussions with the state, whether or not we could look at grabbing one of their grants. We may reach out for county assistance because we could accommodate a very large solar array on top of the building.
Yeah, it looks great for that because you don't have any tree coverage like blocking it or anything, so that'd be really good.
Mhm.
And I think that's oriented for southern exposure.
Excellent.
Yeah. And just as a suggestion, if you're looking for like help in terms of like how to get more grants, I live in Hyattsville, and the city of Hyattsville has been pretty successful at getting grants from the EV Institute and a few other places. So you might just like lean on your neighboring jurisdiction just to see like, hey, where have you guys applied for this, and like what success have you had? Maybe we'll share the application or help kind of like work with you on that, because that might cut down the search costs of finding the grants and figuring out like where you'd be eligible for. And I also mentioned that since you have the leaf collection area in there, Hyatts was also just turning over to replacing all gas powered leaf blowers in the city, and it's going to require in like 2 years, I think, or so from now, to be electric. I don't know how they're necessarily funding that, but I suspect it's probably also like a grant. So if that's something that you're interested in for just reducing noise and reducing also gas consumption, you might reach out to them and ask about that as well. Since you've already kind of got it sat in there, and it might be another way to just kind of piggyback on your neighbors and see how they're doing things as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that. We are actually testing our first electric leaf blower to get some feedback from staff on its efficiency. But I appreciate those comments, and we'll certainly coordinate with Hyattsville and others. Thank you.
Great. Good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Good questions. Appreciate it. Any other questions for the applicant on this?
No question for the applicant, but I do like the name, the William Ely Jr. He was a former commissioner, and he and his wife both are very well known in this county, were very well known in the county, and did a lot of activities to move the county forward. So congratulations, and I do like the name. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bailey, for making that connection. If there's no further questions, Mr. Brayman, Mayor, is there anyone else from your team that needs to speak? If not, no, and there's no further questions for staff, then commissioners, I would turn to you. Mr. Hunt, do you have something to add on this, or you're waiting for the next item? Okay. So commissioners, is there a motion?
Let's accept the recommendation and transmit to the applicant.
Right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? I'll call the roll. Vice Chair Bailey.
But I.
Commissioner Dorner.
Good.
I vote aye as well. The ayes have it 3-0. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Brayman. Good to see you again.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Enjoy your day.
You too.
Thank you all very much.
That concludes all the items we have for today's agenda. Mr. Hunt, is there any further business to come before the planning board today?
Mr. Chairman, there are no additional business items before the planning board today.
Thank you. So without objection, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the work.